Hello, welcome to Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. This program is sponsored by the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. I'm its president, and I'll be your moderator on this session. We want to welcome you, and we also want to welcome our guest, Brian Moss, who's Director of Environmental Services for the County of Calaveras. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you, Al.
Well, one of the, Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. You apparently are doing a lot of things now, and how'd you get involved with this?
Well, actually, it's interesting because at least for me, I actually come out of private enterprise. I used to own my own business, and put myself through school in the trades and working in the trades, and graduated in the sciences. So that's what got me into the field that I'm into today. And it's something that is somewhat of a passion. It's very fortunate to be able to work and enjoy what I get to do every day. And really, for the most part, that really holds true. And I've been entrusted with several responsibilities, which I very much appreciate. And every day is a challenge, which is very good. There is no time to be bored. There is no time to really take too much of a deep breath, but a challenge is a good thing, and enjoy it a lot.
So you don't know how to feel sorry for yourself?
Oh, there's time for that.
Now, what are the varied responsibilities that you have, Brian?
Well, actually, I have several departments that the County Board of Supervisors have had me administer, and that includes environmental health, that I've actually been involved with since 1992 when I first started to work for this county. And I've been the director of that department since 1994. And then in 2005, had an opportunity to take on the Environmental Management Agency, which included some of the departments I'll name now that are part of 5 departments that we currently have. So that's environmental health and air pollution, agriculture, weights and measures. The Ag Commissioner works under the agency. We have the on-site wastewater department that is really has to do with the installation of septic systems. And then within the last couple of years, the Board of Supervisors added the Animal Services Department. So we have 5 departments that we're responsible for, and they're all public health related in one form or another. Some people think about animal services and say public health, and yes, because statutorily, it's there for rabies control.
Right. If you get bitten, that's health.
Absolutely.
I remember some years ago, there was a conference with builders in San Andreas. I attended that, and there was a panel of government officials, and questions come up about septic systems, and I was so impressed with your approach. Your approach was to find a solution. In other words, you seem to be respectful of the property rights of the property owner, even though it may have a difficult site, a problem to solve. And you talked about the main thing you wanted to see was engineering that showed that whatever system was put in, it would work. And it made so much sense to me. And then since that time, I remember you on a number of other occasions where you gave me a favorable impression, and also our taxpayer group. And a few years back, we selected you as for our annual award for excellence in public service. And then it was really a pleasure to see you get that award, and you certainly deserve it. Now, going back on the history, what are the areas where you have the most concern, or seem to where the most problems seem to lie that need attention, or taxpayers should know about?
Well, first of all, what I'd like to say is, and I tell everybody this, the taxpayers, the people that come in the door are my customers.
Right.
And so everybody that walks through the door is a customer.
Right.
And so we try and take that approach in general. As far as the hot topics in California right now, everybody's aware it's groundwater.
Right.
And it's groundwater because of the ongoing drought that we're currently in. I've actually attended some meetings at the State Water Board, Regional Council, rural counties, California State Association of Counties, to talk about some of the legislation that's coming down the pike, if you will. And again, a hot topic issue. Sometimes people refer to groundwater as the great reserve when our surface water sources start drying up, right, as they currently are. Yeah. That's not necessarily true. Our local governing body has had to hear me talk on many occasions about there's only so many straws you can put in the drink. Right. And the truth is, in Calaveras County, it's not as much of an issue as it is, let's say, in the Central Valley, right, where you have groundwater basins that are in a state of overdraft, subsidence in the Central Valley, saltwater intrusion on the other side of the San Joaquin groundwater basin, those kinds of things. So, that is the hot topic issue and at the Capitol. You'll be seeing the taxpayers will be seeing a measure come before them in the January ballot, Proposition 1A.
Yes.
They will talk about the groundwater bond. That's approximately $7.1 billion in funding. They'll be addressing everything from improving surface impoundments to infrastructure, along with groundwater management plans and sustainability.
I understand that there was a conference in Sonora in which the state is requiring local districts to have a 20-year sustainability plan. Is that true?
Well, that's part of the Groundwater Sustainability Management Act, which is part of, I won't bore you with the details, but it's part of actually 2 Senate bills and an Assembly bill that the governor has signed.
I signed.
Yeah, those will become effective, I believe, January 1. It's going to be interesting to see what comes of that, and it won't just include water districts. It can include local jurisdictions such as counties and or cities. So my shop, at least on the environmental health end of the side, tend to work very closely with the Calaveras County Water District. Right. We've had a long-standing relationship and working together. So how this plays out, exactly how this plays out, is yet to be seen. I do know I'm working on looking to see if there's be funding to enhance our groundwater management program that we developed at the county several years ago that is now coming back into play. It's interesting because it's an older report, 2004, but what doesn't change is geology, which right, directly affects groundwater availability.
One of the things that the taxpayers are concerned with, and also some government officials, is in a time of drought and rationing, for the government to deliberately drain New Maloney's Lake to save fish just doesn't seem to make sense unless there's some other purpose in doing that.
That's a very good point. I think New Maloney's Lake is not unlike Shasta or Orville, because I believe it's part of the Central Valley Project, so some of that water is probably making its way to Southern California. But some of it may be going to be used to flush the Delta. I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but what I can tell you is that when I looked at the statistics tonight, New Maloney's is currently at 22% capacity, and that's pretty significant. So,
what does 22% capacity mean in terms of the water supply for Calaveras County and Tuolumne County?
Well, that's actually a very good question, because really the New Maloney's is on the Stanislaus River, right, and there are things called water rights and water reservations that the Water District, Calaveras County Water District, has on the Stanislaus River. They're allowed to pull out so many acre feet
if the water's there. If
the water's there, under what is called a firm yield. So New Maloney's not necessarily being the source, but an intermediary reservoir for CCWD, because you really look at Spicer Reservoir. But again, you bring up a great point. is the water there, and what is it allocated to? So without going too far into this, I could talk to you about senior and junior water rights, but quite frankly, when you hear the term, and you will hear this as this becomes a hotter topic in California, somebody says, well, they have senior water rights. What that really means is they have water rights that predate 1914. If they say junior water rights, it's 1914 forward. So, and that plays into who is really going to be allocated water in the future.
I wonder if this is a parting of regulatory and common law, where common law respects property rights and water rights, and regulatory law does whatever the rulers want it to do, with no regard for any concept of natural rights.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And one of the first things that came to mind when I saw these California water action plans and those kinds of things coming forward 6 months ago is who owns the groundwater?
Yeah.
Okay. Current California water law says that nobody specifically owns the groundwater unless you're in an adjudicated basin like San Joaquin County, that kind of thing. So if neighbor A is complaining that neighbor B is taking his groundwater, really there is no water, quote unquote, water right for the groundwater. And that's something that I do know that our state agencies have partnered with the counties with, basically stating, no, don't change that. We don't want to see a quote unquote, I'll just use the term, water grab of ground waters in the state. Surface waters, we already know, are tied up. I just did a talk yesterday talking a little bit about groundwater and surface water, and the fact that Calaveras, not unlike Tuolumne, are source counties for surface water. And that gets back to the Maloney's issue, that gets back to the Stanislaus River or the Calaveras and or the McCollum. And those waters are very well spoken for from downstream users, as you're well aware.
It would seem like when groundwater is not, when it's in aquifers, in other words, it's moving from property to property, you have a little different circumstance than when it's localized in cracks and fissures and doesn't affect the neighbor at all. So, but in looking at it when it's in aquifers, it would seem to be almost like air, that you have a right to the air above your ground, but you don't have a right to do harm to your neighbors. That's going back to common law. Okay, regulatory law usually tries to dovetail with common law. And so it seemed like it shouldn't be too hard to codify this or the statutes that would identify the water if it's possible, and then through agreements, hopefully private agreements between the neighbors, they would work out how to share the water that's in the aquifers. To me, that seems to make sense.
Well, and that's kind of where we're at today. What we don't want, like I say, is for one person to say, I own the water, and take it all. And take it all. Exactly. Now, in Calaveras County, there are 3 groundwater sources. We've done a lot of work in groundwater here, locally. There's the hard rock fractures that you mentioned. Okay, and that's the majority of the groundwater that we find in the county. There's also the tertiary channel system, which are the buried rivers. And you'll notice that some of the old headworks of the gold mines are sitting on top of those rivers. And how do we know that? Because those mines went out of business. They went out of business because, why? It was too expensive to keep the water out of the mine.
They flooded.
They flooded. So, and isn't it ironic that yesterday's gold in California was gold, and what is today's gold in California? I think it's water. So not to say that all of those headworks sit on top of the tertiary channels, but some of them certainly do. Best case in point, in 2001 when we had the Darby fire and the flume burned out, if you recall that,
I do.
The City of Angels was able to access a mine, gold mine, off of Dogtown Road. And that mine pumped 500,000 gallons a day for over 30 days, and it dropped the static water level only 40 feet in the mine, which is significant. That's a significant amount of water to be pumped out, and to drop the level of the original static level only 40 feet is very, very significant. So very valuable source. But that's the tertiary channels. And then finally we have the East San Joaquin groundwater subbasin, which covers about 70 square miles of the county, and that's down in the
Valley Springs area.
exactly, the northwestern end of the county.
Wow. So what do you see looking ahead? Are we going to, is reason going to rule, or are we going to be able to provide abundant, clean, and affordable water?
Well, it's certainly our goal, and even though we're not the water district, we are responsible for issuing water well permits,
Right.
And so we see a trend there, and that's how we've actually gathered our data. I think it's obvious to everybody in California that we have a very large population that continues to grow, and where are we going to get our water, and what are we going to use it for? And can we be smarter about the way we're using our water? Okay, so what I mean by that as an example is in agricultural purposes, not in Calaveras County, but in the Central Valley,
Right.
do you do drip irrigation versus flooding fields?
Right.
Those kinds of things. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying there are options about how to use the water wisely. And again, we have a large population,
Right.
and when the snows don't fly, like they have not over the last 3 years, people then begin to realize, oh, this is a very finite source, whether it be surface and or groundwater.
That would be kind of like a heads up that you don't drain your reservoirs.
I think that not draining the reservoirs is probably a very good thing. I would think that the local districts would certainly agree with that. I was looking at the statistics on Hogan Reservoir, and I think they're somewhere between, I think they're 13% capacity right now. That's the Calaveras, which is a rain-fed reservoir. It does tend to be drawn down, and there are a certain amount of stakeholders on that reservoir. But I've also noticed that they're eking the water out probably as little as they can right now, just to maintain as much water as they can.
So they're not releasing to save the fish.
I would say that Fish and Game, which is now actually Fish and Wildlife, they probably would tell anybody, whether it's Folsom Reservoir or Hogan Reservoir or New Maloney's, there's X amount of cubic feet per second to be released, is what I'm trying to say. Yes, well, acre feet, but cubic feet per second, CFS, to be released for maintenance of fish in the streams themselves, which is very different than flushing, I would think, the delta.
Right. It would be like director of the water district, Bob Dean, was on a previous program with the taxpayers, and he indicated that the fish have a way of returning. So it's not like you're going to eliminate salmon altogether, because you're not releasing that particular year. And I think that's true. So it seemed like there needs to be some way that the people can get a grip on logic and good management and I imagine it's at the state level, maybe also the federal government level.
Yes, definitely the federal level on the stanislaus.
To break away from whatever ideology seems to be behind this draining of the reservoirs.
Right. Well, again, there's so many competing interests for a very finite resource, and that's what we're really seeing. And when we have good winters, nobody's thinking about this.
No.
Nobody's thinking about the groundwater. Nobody's thinking about the surface water. They may be thinking about the next summer and will there be enough water to recreate on. But in reality, again, it's a finite source, and we need to be thinking about it that way, and we need to be using it in the best best manner possible. You know?
What is the best way to recharge the groundwater? Now, not just in the aquifers, but also in the other areas that the well depths seem to be deeper now than they were 10, 20 years ago. So there is an effect of maybe having too many straws in the glass, so to speak. But I understand that we have an average rainfall of maybe 1.5 feet a year. And if that's true, it seems like there should be some way to get that water to go underground, maybe leach fields or ponds, or it seemed like there ought to be a solution to groundwater.
Well, there's actually several solutions. I do know that one of our supervisors has been talking about forest land and wildland management.
Yeah.
You know, that's one certainly course. One of the more popular methods that you see today is called conjunctive use. And what that means is taking water from a surface water source, let's say the McCullough River,
right,
and putting it into a basin that is very porous.
Yes.
Okay, and you bank the water.
And it goes underground.
It goes underground. What's interesting about that, though, is it's not as easy as putting in, let's say, 100 acre-feet of water and saying, I'm going to bank that water and I'm going to pull out 100 acre-feet later. You can't do that, because when you put the water in the ground, you're going to lose some to evaporation, of course.
Dispersal?
You're going to lose some to what I would call drift, especially if it's over the sub-basin, okay? Right. You're going to lose some to evapotranspiration, and that's the plants. Yes. Okay, so if you put in 100 acre-feet, the hydrogeologists and the engineers have to determine as to how many acre-feet they can actually take back, especially on a dry year. So it's a very good idea, and I understand it's practiced in California. I don't think it's practiced in Calaveras County yet. But that is something that I'm sure that CCWD has considered in the past, and it is a way of looking at taking surface waters, putting them in the ground for future use. Again, depending on where you are in the county, right, will depend on where that groundwater recharge is coming from. So it's difficult. It's difficult to say if there's any one answer. I think it's more like one of those situations where you take a cumulative to address a cumulative effect. You take a cumulative answer, yeah, and an approach and implement, whether it's wildland management or whether it's conjunctive use or whatever it happens to be. The other thing that you're seeing coming through now, and it's fairly minor as far as amount of water, but are the gray water systems. Mm-hmm. And there's legislation that was passed about 4 or 5 years ago that allows for gray water systems to be installed. The trick to this, though, is not what we think of as gray water systems and running your washing machine out into the yard. Right. You still can't do that, but you can put in a system. It's designed similar to a small septic system. Essentially, it's a small tank, and then that's pumped to a drip line with special emitters, and I think it has to be a minimum of 3 inches under the ground, so you can water your trees and your plants and what have you. The problem with that is, like everything else, is cost.
The emitters would clog up.
Well, they did initially, but apparently they've improved on the technology. Now, I can't say that personally because I don't have a system in my yard. But you know, and then the other things that are very easy for people to do, and we're probably all doing this now anyway because of the drought, is, you know, the simple collection of shower water as it's warming up. Right. Or what have you, and then watering your plants with it. Yeah. And I know that all sounds very minor, but if everybody does that, then yes, you're doing a little bit of conservation on your part. And again, you know, residential use is not the high use of water anyway. But if you are looking at residential only, we're using the most water, well, mainly outside.
Yeah, well, that's going back in the ground with the septic systems to recharge.
It is
the groundwater.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, it's a complicated subject.
It is. Oh, we could spend days just talking about this subject alone.
Yeah. what do you see coming ahead? Now, is there anything else you can do to help the county that you're not already doing? Is there any more departments that you can run?
We're at, well, we don't want to encourage anybody. No, pretty much a full plate and very happy with it. Probably what's most interesting is the last department that was added to the agency, being Animal Services, and that's been a lot of work to turn around, if you will, to bring in a new direction. All of my departments are educational based. Right. They may be enforcement oriented from a statutory standpoint, right. But quite frankly, if I can educate you to do the right thing,
yeah, you don't have to be a policeman then.
I don't want to be, and I don't want to be a policeman.
Yeah.
That's the last thing I want to do. But what I want to say is that we couldn't do our job in Animal Services without our volunteers. We have over 100 volunteers that come into that department that have gone through the county process. They do everything from walking our dogs to cleaning the cat cages to the things that you just think you don't really think about that need to be done on a daily basis. So there's some exciting things happening there.
Yeah.
There's some really exciting things happening with the Humane Society and a brand new 501c3 called Friends of Calaveras Animal Services. So if you see an emblem with a horse and a dog and a cat on it, it says FOCUS, F-O-C-A-S. It's not misspelled.
Does it have a website?
You know, they're working on a new website.
Okay, because we could share that.
Oh, I would love to share that, and certainly when that's up and running, we'd be happy to get that out. And they're working currently under the Calaveras Community Foundation, so that's been a real benefit to the county, and there's some exciting things that are happening there as well.
The taxpayers really appreciate it when people bring about public benefits without taxes. Mm-hmm. One example is Feenley Park and Murphy's was done all with private money and
exactly.
I guess sweat equity from the builders donated their time and material. It's just incredible what a community can do, and
absolutely. And
it's appreciated more when there's so many people involved in creating it.
Oh, I agree, and I've seen this firsthand over the last few months. The Humane Society is talking about wanting to build a new shelter.
Right.
And we're working with the board on that, and the board's aware of it, and setting aside some property, hopefully, that we can build a new shelter on. But that will probably be mainly privately funded. Okay. And the passion is really there, whether it be FOCUS or whether it be the CHS, Calaveras Humane Society. The passion is there, the support is there, and it's really amazing how this community steps up. I mean, it's really, maybe I would expect that in a larger community, but really for a small community, this community really steps up. So those two are my stakeholders and my partners, along with my customers who come in the door to get permits. Yeah. So
our taxpayer group really appreciates that, and one of the things that we enjoy is seeing things like this being created, and knowing that it's coming from people's hearts, not from positions of power or directives from the state or even the federal government. Sometimes we look too much for government grants from the taxpayer for improvements, and that has the tendency to hurt. Well, we had an excellent program. It's time to wrap it up. We want to thank you for watching our taxpayer program. See you next time.